Hello everybody, Всем привет. My name is Andrew, and I have a lot to say about Heroes of Might and Magic, the original Heroes of Might and Magic that came out in 1995. I'm old enough that I bought it in the store as a kid. I actually bought the Might and Magic trilogy, and this game came as a demo that would let you play the first 4 weeks. You could play 28 days of game time in the demo, and I played every level I could. 28 days. It's not really quite possible to beat the game in 28 days. It might be. Maybe I'll try sometime, but all right, as soon as I could find the game, I of course bought it. And there was originally a DOS version that came out, and then not too much longer after that, they released a Windows 95 version. This game came out in 95, at the very end of 95, and it was mostly still commercially available as a DOS version in 96. And I bought the DOS version. I think it was like April or something of 1996, and inside there was like a card that said, "Oh, you can send us $15, and we'll send you a Windows 95 version of the CD, and it includes an extra 16 maps." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I actually ended up doing that and bought. I've bought this game so many times. This version that I'm showing you right now is this is from Good Old Games. This is emulated with DOSBox, and let's see. I'm just gonna buy some creatures quick while I'm talking here. And let's see. So they're using DOSBox to emulate this, and you used to be able to get the Windows 95 version working on Windows with compatibility mode. And compatibility mode in Windows. Oh, this is a bad artifact. That's like the one bad artifact you don't want. Anyway, so yeah, this used to work on Windows in compatibility mode, and now Windows 11 has come out and just like it doesn't work anymore. So the only way you can play it is with DOSBox, and it's like it kind of works. The map editor also doesn't work anymore. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and just over the last couple weeks, I started playing around with things and thought, actually this might work. So I think I'm going to try and reverse engineer this game and rebuild a version that compiles on Windows 11, will work on macOS, and perhaps in the future I could get it to work on Android, iOS, some of the other platforms out there. The Heroes of Might and Magic 3 has been modded and rewritten. There's so many cool projects around it. Free Heroes 2 has basically already done this for Heroes of Might and Magic 2. But to my knowledge, nobody's really done this for Heroes of Might and Magic 1. Now, there's only like 37 original maps for this game, so like I understand that it's not... There's just a lot more. There's on the order of like a few hundred maps, I think, for Heroes 3, and there's a lot more maps too for Heroes 2 as well. There was an expansion. The Price of Loyalty was the expansion for Heroes 2. But no one's really taken care of Heroes of Might and Magic 1. And I mean just look at this color palette. There's so much here. Like there's a lot to love in the color palette for me personally. I feel like the other games kind of got a little darker, or they maybe this was just a thing in video games. There was more brighter colors in video games in like the early to mid 90s, and then it got kind of more drab. And you could probably say the same thing of Hollywood, that everyone uses the same like lenses, and suddenly everything's kind of more gray. But anyway, I just really have always liked the color scheme of this game. And I'm gonna take a pause here with this game, and I'm gonna show you guys a couple of tricks first of all that you may not know. So I don't know if we want to call this Easter eggs or what, but I'm gonna quit the game, or actually, you know what? I'm gonna just Alt-Tab out of it and reopen it, and it should open as a much smaller window. Now this is going to be a little bit harder to view for people, so I'm gonna go and do something else. I'm going to show you the DOSBox config, which I have up here, and we're going to go in here, and I'm actually going to pull up my Windows Explorer as well and show you what these are all the different files in the directory of the actual DOS game. You have the maps directory where you have all the maps, and these are the campaign maps, and then they're actual. You can see the 16 Windows 95 maps here, and then the original maps, including these various campaign maps. I believe there's 20. Okay, yeah, there's 22. Nope, there's actually 21 because I have one additional player made map here. So yeah, there's 21 original maps that came with the DOS version. There's the 16 maps that came with the Windows 95 version. And I want to draw your attention to something here. These file names, like this first one, this is actually Claw. This is the map I was just on. There's 4 numbers at the end. DOS had 8 characters. 8.3 was like the standard DOS file name, and so these were all 8.3 DOS file names, and so the first 4 were like sort of a code to some internal code they used in the company or whatever for differentiating between the maps. And then these last 4, as I've been reverse engineering this, these actually matter for where the maps show up. Like the program looks at the map file name and decides, well, certain things to display to you. And so the 100 means you're going to start at a specific castle and you can't start at the other castles. This 1, 2, 3, 4 means you're going to basically be randomly allocated to any castle. Here's an interesting one. This is 0, 2, 3, 4. There's also one up here. This is Archipelago. And this is, I forget which one this is. But there's several of these maps. And what I'm going to actually do, actually, let me do something else first. First, I'm going to show you how to modify your DOSBox config to do this a little bigger, but still windowed. Now I want to do windowed so that I can show other screens while I have the game screen up, because I'm reverse engineering things, so I need to have both the game screen up as well as some text file open looking at binary and hex values or whatever. And I'll get into that later. But here we are. So what I just did here is I turned off full screen equals true, and I turned full screen equals false, so we don't start in full screen. And I just doubled the window resolution on both sides, which actually means it's 4x larger. So I went from 640 by 480 to 1280 by 960. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to relaunch, and let's run this and see. Yep, hey, look at that. So now we're windowed, and we gotta wait a second for the screen to load. And you know what? While we're here, let's look at the credits too. These are actually the people who created this game. And John Van Cagnum is how I think you pronounce that. It's probably like a very Irish name. He was famous. I think recently most recently I looked him up for some reason, and he was like driving race cars in Los Angeles. That was like his hobby. And I guess if enough people actually follow this channel, maybe I could talk to him or interview him or something. That'd be pretty fun. The real guy I'd like to talk to is this lead programmer, Phil Steinmeier. I have some questions for him after starting to dig into this. Like, oh boy, I have questions. Phil, I'm coming for you. I got a lot to ask you. I think the company was based in Redwood City, California, which is, maybe a half hour, 40 minutes south of San Francisco. So a lot of these people, probably maybe they've probably all moved on and done other things, but there might still be one or two of them around in Redwood City, and I've thought about going there and trying to look people up. Paul Romero, of course, has been. I've seen some stuff go by from him on YouTube about the different musical arrangements. But that's enough of that. So let's go back here, and I want to show you something here in the map listing. So right now we're looking, and so Claw is this. Let me move this over so we can. Just a second here. I've got to Alt Tab out of this and switch here to move the window just slightly enough that I can show you the map names while we do this. That's why we wanted to do it windowed, so that we can show multiple things at once here. So this map here is that I've highlighted on the left. This is Claw. This map we don't see here, this BEM, and I'll show you what that is in a second. And then CNM is around the bay, so that's this map here. But let's go back a second and look at, let's see, multiplayer games, hot seat, sure, 2-player. Suddenly we see Archipelago, which is, that is the BEM map. Let's see which FEL was. I think this is Continentia. That's what that one is. FEL 60234 is Continentia. Now, one neat trick that I'm going to show you guys is, we'll quit this for a second, and I am going to rename these files 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And I remember, I think there's one more. Yep, this one down here. So I remember playing these maps on Windows 95. I think Archipelago was the first map I played on Windows 95. I thought that was one of the new maps. And so I think, and I'm going to verify this, I'm digging up my old Windows 95 CD to look at what the map was actually on it, and see if the good old games version is like, has modified this. But anyway, let me restart the game quick here, and here we go. And we're going to see these maps pop up, and so suddenly now these maps are single-player maps. We've just converted the multiplayer-only maps into the single-player maps. And I don't know why sometimes this intro plays and sometimes it doesn't. I haven't figured that out. If I figure that out in the course of my reverse engineering, of course, I'll let you guys know. So we're going to new game, standard game, and now look, suddenly we have Archipelago, we have this Continentia, and I think it was, let's see, oh, these are all the Windows 95 maps, which they're not alphabetical, you'll notice. I believe it's Four Corners, I think was one. I think it was Four Corners. 4 Nations, Four Corners. They might have done that because it was confusing. But I think Four Corners is the other version. And here's one more Easter egg. When you want to look at a whole map, and I've been using this for debugging and reverse engineering, there's a special code you type on your keyboard. It only works on the keys on the top row, the numbers. You don't use it on like the number pad. 101495. Like, in the university system in America, a course like 101, like Geology 101, is like the initial introduction course. It's also like showing you everything about a new course, and so I think that's 101495 is like some code, some clever code they had to just show the whole map. So you can kind of take a look around and see what's going on in the various maps. And here we go. I'm gonna. Well, you know what? Let's just leave this up for a second. So that's a few Easter eggs related to the game, and gonna close down a couple of these windows and switch gears to something else. So let me. Oh, yeah, this is funny. I pulled up the original receipts from when I bought this game. I had these when I was a kid. I saved my receipts for like things I spent my money on because I was, I saved up and I bought. This is my receipt for the Might and Magic trilogy. I bought it on January 13th, 1996 at 4:40 p.m. at Egghead Software. And I guess I got a 5% member discount. Ooh, cool. So it cost me about $21.23. And then I also have the receipt from Software Etc., but this was a Software Etc. inside the Barnes & Noble bookstore in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I hadn't seen this. This was a boxed copy of Heroes of Might and Magic that I found there. $39.99 was the retail price. That was hefty, but at the time. But I loved the demo so much. I mean, they released demos so people would play the games and like them and want to buy them. So it totally worked on me, and it was a very good purchase. I'm still very happy about this. And it's funny that I found the receipts in my old sort of childhood treasures not too long ago, and I scanned everything, so I still have it laying around. Maybe that's weird, but that's me. So anyway, I have decided to start working on reverse engineering this game, and there's a project called Free Heroes 2 that I would imagine a lot of people are familiar with, and I'm sure we'll talk about it some more. I definitely studied a few things from Free Heroes 2 before embarking on this. The first thing I had to do was just figure out how to get some graphics to show, like, how does a video game even work? How does this work? And so what I want to do right now is actually just show you something that I already have running, that I built over the last maybe 2 weeks. I've been working on this. I actually had something like this running in just a few days, but I've been spending a lot more time reverse engineering the map format to get things correct, and maybe I'll explain why in a little bit. Let's see. So if I open this up, this window right here, which I'm gonna move over here. Now you can see, so this, we have our game window over here, and I'm actually gonna load a different game, a different map. I'm gonna load the same map so we can compare. So this was like my first step of reverse, well, not my first step, but one of the first steps. And where I've been spending some time lately. So I just opened up Claw. I'm going to do 101.495 and have a look at the whole Claw map here. So we've got a bunch of sea, we've got some competitor castles. Sorry, I'm zipping around really fast. Got some mines. There's a neutral town here in the middle. And this is where we're starting down here. Now, switching over here, this is my version that I have compiled on Windows. It also compiles on Mac, which is a good thing. But this is basically a map dump that I did a very basic reverse engineer to be able to get this map dump. What you'll notice, first of all, just looking at the differences, let's zoom up here and just have a look. So how about this? So you'll notice I've got a little problem here with the mast on the shipwreck. There's a bit mirroring that's flipped there. You can see there's a random artifact, random resource. Where is this guy? Where is this this centaur? No idea. And then there's no animation here coming up from this this volcanic vent. And also the water is not animated like it is here on the game. Just scrolling down a little bit on the sort of new version. We look over here. We've got, you know, okay, so there's no hero that spawned, so that's something that's managed in game state. This, you know, the treasure chest is there, but again, these creatures, these random creatures, we got an archer down here at the bottom of the screen. They're not there. There's also what looks like a little bit of sprite stretching here at the on this ore, this random resource. And then if you look here, this minecart, I can show you this. I'll show you the sprites in a little bit. But this minecart is actually overlaid, and there's something that needs to happen with the blending here that I haven't quite reverse engineered correctly. But it's, you know, it's coming along. It's a work in progress. There's also something a little bit funny going on with the blending. Oh, sometimes when I switch, it starts to scroll. So there's something a little bit in this upper corner of the town. You see this. There's just something not quite right. Maybe it needs to be shifted. And same with this tree. There's something going on with the blending here that I need to adjust. And so that's what part of this reverse engineering project is. Just figuring out these details that need to be fixed and things that were done by the original program that aren't necessarily stored in the map or processed correctly by the program. So I'm hitting buttons, and I forget that I usually use the mouse to play, but in the DOS version you can use the keyboard to move your hero around as well. You could do the arrow keys to move them. So anyway, you'll notice there's something weird with the windmill here. There's some animation that needs to happen there, and also over here with the this mercury refinery, or the alchemist lab, or whatever this is called. I guess it's the alchemist lab, and it is a mercury refinery. You see there's, you know, this little bits of mercury dropping out of the window into this cauldron, this gray cauldron, and there's the fire is animated. Well, the animation hasn't been done. You can see where the fire is going to go on the mercury, and you can see the pipe, but this is also a little bit shifted to the left. So these are some of the bugs, and then you'll also notice that all of these random monsters are not in this map, except the griffins. And you're like, huh, that's kind of weird. Why are the griffins here? A lot of the resources are either fixed, or these, you know, this green ball is like a random resource. That's the map editor structure, and yeah, so this is where this is at. You'll also notice, you know, that these aren't populated. These there's no hero or castle assigned to the user. That's something that would be done in the game states. There's no buttons here to move, or no hero summary down here. So there's some information that's missing here. I have like a rough version of the mini map up here, but it doesn't look quite as nice as this version in the original game. And I have this line running down the middle, which, okay, I've got some things to work on. You know, that's the current state of things. That's how rebuilding stuff works. So how did I get to this point? You know, this is a good question. So I am going to turn off this. We'll leave the game up. And let us go to bring up the Explorer again. And I'm going to move this over so we can look at some of the files. And we're going to go look in the Heroes file here. So the first program that I had to build was actually so I had to figure out how to reverse engineer the game resources. I had to figure out how to get these map tiles, how to get some of these sprites, how do you get the tiles for the castle? Where does that stuff come from? And it actually comes from that AGG file. So if we go back here, this let's see, it's the biggest file. I guess it's in data. Heroes AGG. There's also one for the editor, and it's slightly larger. But heroes.agg is the data file that has all of the sprites. And so that's basically like some kind of compressed format that has a lot of the game sprites, maybe some of the audio, things like that are in there. And I have, yeah, let me show this. So I actually wrote a program. It's up on GitHub. That's my name, A.G. Stevens, Andrew G. Stevens. And I wrote a Python version, HOMM1 extract.py. You just put this in the same directory as your heroes.agg, and it will extract everything. It works on the editor. I then wrote a version in C++. I guess I just provided macOS instructions. But basically, you take your AGG archive. This is the structure, which I reverse engineered. Well, let me show you this first. I actually first did HOMM2 extract using some info from, let's see, I credit them down here. I think Free Heroes 2 and this guy, James Koppel. So I used some of this information with AI, with Claude Sonnet 4.6. I love that stuff. I was able to very quickly generate this Python script to dump all of the Heroes of Might and Magic 2 sprites, and I tested on the expansion AGG file as well. So this is the file for Heroes of Might and Magic 2 Price of Loyalty. But anyway, I extracted these. It worked great. I might have had a few minor bugs that I had to fix, but it worked very quickly. And then I was like, okay, well, I guessed that the Heroes of Might and Magic 1 AGG file is pretty close, pretty similar. There might be some minor differences. But I started with that. I threw it into the AI. I also went and found I found a few comments on some different forums, and actually I think it was the James Koppel again had written a few comments about the original HOMM format and how it differed from the HOMM2 AGG format. And I was able to use that plus a little bit of debugging to come up with the specification here for how these were actually working. So, I can go into more detail, but I think, this is the address. If you want to read it in detail, go for it. What I'd rather do is show you what's inside of it, because a picture is 1,000 words. So these are like the map views of the artifacts. And this 37 here represents a random artifact for the map editor, for example. But here's the much nicer, higher resolution images for the artifacts. Their foremost scroll of knowledge. The different things, the four-leaf clover, Shtyrioklisnik, the endless sack of gold, endless purse of gold, I think, an endless bag of gold. Let's see. We also have our monsters. We have a layer of, let's see, monsters 32. So these are all of the different map level monsters, and there may also be the monsters. These are the monsters for the battle that are used in the battle. So we'll see about what else we have here. So these are the portraits. Let's say this is maybe like, I don't remember which one that is, which sorceress. First one, this is Lord Kilburn. And it goes, I think it goes knights, and there's about 10 of each hero, and then it goes barbarians. That's, I believe, Atlas. And then we get to yeah, that's Castor, the elf. He was definitely a character from the Might and Magic series. I think he was one of the default sorcerers that you start with in like Might and Magic 3 or 4, I want to say. Let's see. These are the different town sprites, and you'll notice here, if I bring this up again, so there's something funny going on with these upper corners of the town sprites that I have, and I think some of it's blending and some of it's rotation, and I actually think that perhaps this first upper left corner tile might actually just be repeated twice. I think there's something funny going on there that well, I'll figure it out at some point. And anyway, there's some other cool stuff here. You see these 82M files these are all the different sound effects, and I have reverse engineered already the sound map of the game, which I can actually I'll demonstrate that in a second too. But I'm looking for the images because I want to show the board. So maybe this will show up. Okay, I'm going to have to pull this up separately. So let me just add a source here. So this is the border of the game. This is just a fixed image here. And I've actually thought about upscaling this and making the game board bigger. I'm considering this. I know Free Heroes 2 did this, and well, we'll see. You know, if you guys have a thought about it, let me know. Let me know in the comments. If it makes sense to basically increase the size of this game window. Let's shut that, and let's go back here. So anyway, I've gotten through the Heroes of Might and Magic 1 extract program. There might, you know, there might still be a tiny bug in this, because some of the, like I've actually been wondering if some of the structures, like if I go here to resource 32, some of the structures like the, let's see, like this part here on 28, this is that part of the alchemist lab, the refinery. I'm actually wondering if some of this sprite is getting cut off or if it's shifted. So I have to do a little bit of research there, and it could be that this is actually the bug, and that in this screen here, when my alchemist lab is you know, there's something wrong here with this, and I need to figure out if that is due to my HOMM1 extract file. I mean, this looks like it's the right size, but it also looks like it's shifted over something. So we'll figure it out. Problem for the future. Let's see. We're gonna switch gears out of these. And one of the things too, so once I got the AGG extracted, then I had to start looking at these map files. And the map files, they're very different format than what was done in Heroes Might and Magic 2. You know, I looked at what was done in Free Heroes 2, and I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of see what might be going on, but when I opened up the files in a hex editor, I didn't really see any similarities. So I was searching around, and I landed on one of these forums, the Beta Archive, where I guess people are preserving abandonware. And this is a thread where someone released a very early demo of Heroes of Might and Magic 1. So let's just go to the beginning of this thread here and see. So they're talking about the very, very early release of the game with early screenshots, and that's a bunch of later stuff. And this guy, Hal, let's see. Oh, actually, this is the whole thread. So, where's Halfurry? Where's his? Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. So this guy Halfurry decoded some of this map, and he provided a little byte mapping. This is like the weird. This is like, you know, there's this dead internet theory that like there's a whole bunch of information on forums from like a long time ago that are slowly disappearing. And I feel like this information might have been somewhere else before, but this is the only spot that I could find it on the internet. I had the AI help me search for things. I was searching, and this is like the one guy, this is like the smoking gun where I found this byte mapping. And this byte mapping isn't perfect, but it was a great place to start, and it did let me get very quickly to getting something running, you know, getting the program that you had previously seen to getting that running. Just a second, I'll move this over so we can see a little better. So, you know, thanks to this guy, this Hal Fury, maybe it's Hall Fury, I'm not sure. But anyway, you can see me down here posting at the very end of the third page. This was probably last week sometime. When did I post? Yeah, here we are. April 4th. So yeah, last Saturday. I started working on this. I was decoding, and you know, I was like, hey, does anybody have any more info what you did to reverse engineer it? Of course, nobody replied because this is some cryptic comment, and that was 14 years ago. So I posted some of my early results, which basically there's a fixed header. There's some slight differences in the DOS and Windows 95. There's actually one pair of bytes. I guess that's called a word. There's a word which describes whether it's a DOS version or Windows 95 version of the map. The Windows 95 versions are approximately 20 kilobytes bigger than the Windows 95 version, than the DOS version. So the Windows 95 is about 20 kilobytes bigger than the DOS version, and I've figured out why since this post. And basically, at this hex address, you know, initially there's the multilingual names and multilingual descriptions. I think it's really just like the big stuff like English, German, French, Spanish. Those are the main languages, and there's space for some others, but I don't think they're filled out. So they created space for it to be internationalized, but they didn't use it for most maps. And I think some of the modders have filled it in since then. And then the map, there is a map width and map height for these maps. It's always 72, so it's square. So I initially thought only the first 72 mattered because all maps were square. I also, if you notice, this is kind of a funny thing here. Switch to the game if I can. How about this? Okay, so we're back in here. Let me quit, and I'll show you one more thing. Oh, whoops. Well, we'll have to restart it. That was not... Okay, we're getting the longer intro. But one thing that was confusing when I was decoding these maps was the maps are listed as different sizes. So you'll notice here, claw, size small. You know, we go to Shangri-La, size large. To if by sea, small. You know, Shangri-La is a giant map though. This is huge. There's a lot more land mass. So all the maps are 72 by 72, but they are listed as like according to the amount of land mass that they have in the game. So claw is small, and 101,495. You can see the landmass in claw is about 1/4 of the available space. You know, the rest is just this open ocean. The ocean's animated, by the way, which is kind of beautiful. And that's actually of this guy Hall Fury. What he posted here. These animation flags on bit 2 and 3. This is what I'm suspicious might be wrong. It might be right. It might be wrong. I don't know. I'm questioning that a little bit. And Byte 8 and 9, he didn't have this right either. I've reverse engineered that correctly since then. And so anyway, this map is actually. So 72 by 72 map is 51,840. Or that's right. Sorry, 72 by 72 is 5,184. And there's 10 bytes per tile. There's 10 bytes of information per tile. And so that translates to 51,840 bytes of space. Now these maps, the full map size here is you know, most of the DOS maps are about 60 kilobytes in size, you know, plus or minus. And so 51 kilobytes of that is just this raw map, this raw tile map. And it's important to note that, like, one thing that's cool is these are listed as column major. So in the game file, they're stored as columns. So when you're reading them sequentially in the file, in the hex addresses, they're columns. But when they're displayed in the game, they are rows. So you have to do a transpose. And when I was doing this with an earlier version of my, you know, trying to get this map working, I had the transpose wrong. And so what happened was all of the edges along the coast were sort of misshapen. Like the castles looked okay, like a lot of things looked okay, but actually that's not true. No, the castles were actually kind of jumbled. The sawmills, things like that, were jumbled. These multi-sprite things, this Daemon Cave would have been jumbled because it was transposed. And so once I did this transpose and basically realized that the tiles were not being done row by row, but column by column, but then they were displayed row by row, that got me this relatively nice looking map, which I'm not showing. Okay, trying to switch out of. box has taken over my computer. All right, we're back. So anyway, this tile block was interesting, and then I had to figure out where, what, is this correct? And in this post, as of, I guess I made this post also on Saturday from my initial reverse engineering, I hadn't quite figured out 8 and 9 yet. I was still working on this bit flip here, which I'm like 90% sure that's correct, but we'll see. It's a solvable problem for later. And then, yeah, I've spent a lot of time the last couple days on this event and object region that happens basically after this address to the end of the file. And so I'm going to switch over to my current documentation. So this is my private repository, which I'm going to share pretty soon once I have something that's working a little better. But this is my documentation that I've written for me and didn't post on this public forum. So let's see, we got up here. So let's go to byte 8 and 9. So byte 8 of this is where we get like these values in this byte tile. So every tile on this map is represented by a byte. For those of you who aren't computer engineers, I guess I'm an I have a background in electrical engineering, by the way. So this is what a byte is. A byte is 8 bits. They use zero-based indexing, and a byte is 8 bits. And this is a high bit, low bit. I think this would be considered little endian, which means that the lowest value is on the end. So this would be called little endian format. And 2 bytes is called a word, so that would be 16 bits. But this is a byte, and so we had 10 bytes. We had byte 0 through 9, and here we explain, this. So byte 0 is a ground tile, which if I go in here to, I want to say it's ground 32. These look like ground tiles, don't they? I'm not sharing that window. Let me share that window. So these are our ground tiles here in ground 32. So this probably looks familiar. This is that kind of stuff. So these are specified, and basically these, this is a byte, and a byte also, by the way, in binary, can go up to a value of 256, or actually, I guess it's between 0 and 255. And in this case, in the ground 32, we have 123 of these different ground tiles. So that would be using 7 of these bits. So that's basically 2 to the 7th power is 128. And so these ground tiles are encoded in bits 0 through 6 of this byte 0. And then we have, sorry, we're back up here. Then this ICN file selector 0 to 14. So that tells us what kind of sprite is laid on top of this ground tile. So you'll see, it could be trees, it could be these flowers, these rocks. Sorry, many things open at once here. So all this stuff here is ground tiles. Not these. Not the monsters, but this graveyard, for example. These are sprites that are specified by this layer 1 ICN. This spell shrine, the mine, the treasure chest. These griffins actually are, but that's kind of a special case, which I'll get into in a little bit. the let's see. So basically, this level 1 type and then the index. So the type tells us of these 14, which were, let's see, was it up here that I wrote this? Okay, I have these somewhere. Here they are. They're all the way down here. I should probably fix that in the documentation, huh? So, so bytes 1 and 3 basically specify this ICN layer type. Now, what is that ICN layer type? Well, let's go back here and let's look at this object 32, for example. So this object 32, this is nautical and water objects. So object 3200, this relates to value 0. So if the byte value is 0, it's going to be one of these objects. And then the second byte, so byte 2, is going to be the index in this. So let's say we're looking at, we have a first byte value of 4. That is a lava object. Well then, so let's look at object 32.4. So basically the second byte would be, would specify which of these tiles it is. So we have an obelisk here. So let's go up here, for example, this orange obelisk right here at the top of the screen. This would be over here. This would be this value. This would be 12. So bytes 1 for this tile right here. Byte 1 would be 4. And byte 2 would be 12, and that is how we know what is at that location. Similarly, you have like so I've got to go all the way back up here to look at this. In layer 2, you have the same encoding, but you could put something else on top of it. And I'm trying to think of what a good example is of that. And actually, this could be animation. I haven't thought too much about this, about what the layer 2 ICN is. So I will probably come back to that because I think I'm speaking a little bit out of turn on it. But my guess is that this is actually the animation. That this is where you're going to animate certain things. And yeah, I think that makes sense. I haven't actually had to explain this fully yet. This is my first time really explaining this. So I think this is where the animation is going to come into play. And what I have done is use the cart index here, which is in byte 5. This tells us which cart resource frame. So we're going to go to resources 32, and I'll show you there. Resource 32. So you have a number of different minecart overlays here, and they're actually up here. So these are the different minecart transition or like basic overlays. And then these are the actual minecarts that basically get overlaid over that. So that is the layer 2 there. And I think for other tiles where there's animation, I expect that we'll actually be using bytes 3 and 4 as well to do the animation, and it's probably at like a fixed frequency. Like, if we're looking at this, it's about, at the clock speed that DOSBox is clocked at, it's happening about 3 or 4 times a second. So several, let's say about 4 or 5 hertz, something like that is my guess. And the collision, so I think my version of the software that I've written is not quite handling this correctly, because some things should be on top of others and they're not. And I think there's something going on with those town corner tiles that I showed. And then we get to byte 8, which I spent a while decoding, and byte 9, which is auxiliary data for, well, essentially byte 8. But byte 8 is an activity tile. So on this map, for example, our hero here, if we come down here to this this treasure chest, this this gives us an event, and the game has to do something, right? Then we go over here to the fairy ring, okay, and then we're going to head over to the windmill. But each of those basically translates to something. And I just realized I don't have my. You guys can't see. Oh shoot! I wasn't sharing the screen correctly there. So the tile record was what I was referring to before. So just to quickly recap, this is the layer 2 stuff that handles the minecart when the bit 4 of the flag's byte 6. When this flag has bit 4 set, the minecart index applies to to the object in layer 1. So you basically overlay the correct minecart over those values. I also think this is done for animation, but I haven't gotten there yet. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's move this down. So anyway, back here, so we're back to tile type. So I just demoed a couple things here of what cause events, and also even going back to the castle causes another event. So watch the AI take a quick turn. Okay, great. We're going to go back here, and that causes an event to go back to the castle. And I don't know. Let's build a blacksmith and change up the music a bit. So these are what I basically went into maps and looked at the map. I physically inspected the map, and then I also went in to like the actual hex files, and I was looking what corresponds to what. And so these are like graphical tiles that may have animation. So some of them, like the shipwreck mast, the shipwreck mast was specifically located as tile 23. The whirlpool 2C. But there's actually 2 parts of the whirlpool. There's a part that's cosmetic, and then there's the part that actually causes the action. Let's go down here. These are the actual object entrance tiles, or what I called walkable triggers. And so these tiles caused events to happen. So like a mine entrance is 99, a water wheel entrance where you get some gold, 98, lighthouse entrance 97, dragon city entrance 96. These are various structures where you would recruit creatures. Graveyard, where going back here to this is the graveyard where you'd fight some ghosts and maybe win a couple thousand gold. Not sure it's worth it. Genie lamp, a gazebo. The gazebo is like this thing up here, which gives you 1,000 experience. The fountains. See this fountain? There's a little bit of animated water flow there. That's here. There's the campfire. There's no campfires on this map. We just went through a fairy ring, and you notice there's a little bit of animation here on the treasure chest. I actually think this might be a shimmer effect. This could be done in the palette as well. This may not actually be animation. This may be like a palette-enabled shimmer effect, and that might also be what's happening here in the ocean. So I have to do some more research, figure that out. But one thing that I found that was the most interesting is this fixed monster. So 9A is this griffin. This is marked by 9A in the map. And if I pull up this guy, this is my raw map here, and there are almost no random monsters on this map except for the griffins. So the griffins are specified at the tile level, And looking at the griffins in the game, it's lots of griffins, which is probably, I'm gonna guess it's at least 20 griffins. I guess we could figure it out, but by going and fighting them. But I'm not gonna do that right now. So the fixed monster here, 09A, this is specified by the tile, and then byte 9 specifies how many creatures are there. So this byte 9 auxiliary data is how many creatures are there. Similarly, you have something like a castle town entrance, A8. So this would be and there's also like C0 is a neutral town entrance, or there's another C1 is like a player, like a basically an opponent's castle entrance is a C1. Sometimes it's a little inconsistent, but your results aren't always perfect when you're reverse engineering. So, but I've observed this enough that I put it in the list. But these values have a byte 9 that specifies, I've seen like 0C, 0F, and I think that is how much the castle is built up. Like our castle here, we had archers, the peasant hut, thieves guild, tavern, and and we had a castle built, and we have a well. So this is specified probably by that byte 9 how built up the castle is for the map setup. Now also where these monsters are is also specified in byte 8, and there's actually not any auxiliary data in byte 9 for this. These just show up as like a level of creature. So move this over a bit. I'm not sure that it's fully visible. Okay, hopefully that's a little better visibility. I can move this over too. That's probably better. So yeah, these values are basically C3, and on this map everything there's only C3, or maybe there's some C4. There might be some C4s. I think these guys up here might be some C4s that are protecting these artifacts. C5 is a little bit stronger creatures, and C6 is where you're getting like a couple dragons, of several phoenix, things like that. But yeah, that's basically how the tile maps were broken down. There's a couple other things here that I wanted to mention, and then I think we're going to wrap up for the day. So after we do that 5,000, what was it? 51,000, was it 840? Is that how many? Yes, 51,840 bytes that are the map tiles. After we do that, we encounter the event and object region. And I've fully decoded it. Well, okay, not completely fully, but mostly decoded it. That first there's a list of castles. There's room for up to 36 castles. I think the map with the most castles is like Sea Breeze. And I can just show you quickly how many castles that is. It's a lot. Sea Breeze. 1495. Yeah, so every single island, there's like 22 islands. Every single island has a town or a castle on it. There's just so many of them. And so that's the map of the original maps that has the most castles on it, but you can have up to 36. There's mines. I think there's room for up to like 40 I've only seen 36, or actually I think maybe 34 is the most mines I've seen on a map. And then section 3 of this is the sound effect tile overlay, which let me see if I can pull that up for Claw, because that's kind of interesting. So let me pull up the original Claw map. So here we are on Claw, and pulling up from my unknown tiles. I think it's this one. No. Well, so anyway, that I'm digging around through my reverse engineering files to figure out where I had the sound maps, and I think maybe this is it. That is, but it's rotated 90 degrees. So this one, here we go. So I'm going to add this and show you guys this file. So this is a sound map of how the sound effects are played in the game, and I want you to turn up your speakers for this a little bit. So you see this is the Claw map here, and on the right side you see this map. You hear some sound effects. There's some birds tweeting, different things like that. There's a little bit of the coast breaking. You can hear a little bit of noise like that. But I'm going to go over here closer to this orange tile. The orange tiles on this sound map represent the windmill. What do you hear? Do you hear the whooshing sound? So that whooshing sound is defined by those orange tiles. And as you move a little bit further away from those orange tiles, you still hear it. So those orange tiles are probably like the sound is at like 100%. And then as you go another tile away, it drops by 20, 25%, something like that. You can still hear it a little bit here. Still hear it a little bit here. But now you're hearing the sawmill sound. So the sawmill sound is that's the yellow sound there. So I just thought that was interesting. That's how they did this. They encoded the sound effects. These like sound effects related to structures are encoded inside the map, which is cool. Now these orange things up here, these are probably the shipwrecks. There's a steam vent sound here. That is that little green, the green dot there. And the Daemon Cave has its own sound effect. And what is this green thing? Or I guess these are two slightly different shades of green. It's a little harder to see. But what are those? Those are this fountain. There's some running water sound you hear at the fountain. And then these shrines play a subtle gong. There's a subtle gong music. And then these little brown marks here, they're mines. So when you get close to the mine, you hear some clanking. So that's how the sound map works in this game. And what are these purple things? Well, if you were able to summon a boat here, if you summoned a boat and got close to this, you would probably hear some kind of like rock, some sound, waves breaking on the rocks sound, something like that. Yeah, so let's close that window. And once we get past those sound maps, we're basically getting to the end of the DOS maps. So there's not much more happening after that for the DOS maps. The Windows 95 maps have a different format, and they basically have another 20 kilobytes, which so far I've figured out that from the end of the file there's 20,736 bytes, which corresponds to 4 bytes times 5,184 tiles, which basically is there's another 4-byte extension to our original 10-byte tile map. There's another 4-byte extension to that tile map. And I'm still reverse engineering some of that. And I'll have some more results later, probably for a future video. I specify the different types of mines, the different types of castles that you can see based on what how they're flagged. So there, because you can also get a random castle, like in my so I pull this up. Oh, I need to open it that way. So here, like in the map editor lingo, the random castle, this would be defined as 0x84 would be specifying that this is a random castle. Whereas if we go up here in the map, this is specified as a knight's town. So that would be 00. And this is a barbarian's castle, which is 0x82, so that's hex value 82. Sorceress castle 81, and warlock 83. So all 4 hero classes are represented, and then you get the random choice as to which one you start with. I talked already a little bit about the map suffix. That really surprised me to discover this. But people were starved for memory and wanted to keep programs small for, it was expensive to distribute things on CD back then, and even floppy disks. So people wanted to conserve memory any way they could, both disk space and system memory. So here I specify which kinds of mines there are, but one thing that's worth mentioning with the mine slots is there are 2 special structures that can also be flagged. So you have your sawmill, your alchemist lab, ore mine, sulfur mine, crystal mine, gem mine, and gold mine, but there's also a dragon city and the lighthouse. And the dragon city, you can recruit dragons, and I think maybe it increases your dragon production. Maybe, I don't recall. I'll have to review that. And the lighthouse lets everybody move a little bit further when they're in a boat on the map. And both of these structures can be flagged, and so they're sort of special cases in the mines and special structures offset. So if they exist on a map, this is where they're specified. And all structures start out as not flagged. So at least in the DOS maps. That may not be true in the Windows 95 maps, which I'll get to later. Here, I went through and decoded all of the sound tiles by going through maps and listening carefully. It was kind of fun. The one that I think surprised me the most, I forgot about the magic shrine gong, and the oracle shrine there's kind of this bird call, which is strange. It's not like the one that just played, but it's a different one. And the teleportation monolith has like it has like a hum to it. There's sort of a magical hum. So it was interesting. It was fun. Fun to decode that. And now there's some analysis here of the Windows 95 world map starts. One thing I might show here is what's one difference, what's one bug of the DOS maps versus the Windows 95 maps. So this map here is Dragon Rider. This actually won. There was a contest, and I don't remember. I think New World Computing which then became 3DO, which then became Ubisoft. New World Computing had a contest for when the map editor came out and had people create maps, and I think this one won the map contest. This was created using the Windows 95 map editor. It's about an 80 kilobyte file, and I'm going to show you what's wrong with it in this DOS version. And this is part of what's bothered me about this whole good old games release, DOS only, is it doesn't work with custom maps that have been created by Windows 95. So see, we start out in our screen, instead of focusing on a hero, is focused on this fog of war. And we're Hero Castor, we can see him, but we can't move anywhere. We can't do anything. We have a castle. We have nothing built in the castle. We could recruit some heroes. What do we got here? We've got Lord Hart and Crag Hack, classic. And anyway, and then we have 3 heroes that are, well, basically ready to get us. And I have some gold. I could buy that or defend it. But basically, this is a Windows 95 map, and in the original DOS maps, you were not able to specify starting heroes. You couldn't do this. The Windows 95 map editor added these extra 4 bytes at the end of the map format to enable you to be able to do this. Now, this map isn't technically playable in the DOS version that I have here, but if I do a 101.495 and open it up, suddenly it is. Suddenly we can select Castor, we can start to move, and this is one of my favorite maps. So this map definitely contributed to me wanting to rebuild this game, wanting to reverse engineer this, and this map has actually been ported to Heroes of Might and Magic 2. And it might have, I don't remember if it was included or added as like a download, or maybe it was in Price of Loyalty. I'll have to go back and look. But this map is in Heroes of Might and Magic 2. You can definitely play this map in Free Heroes 2. And I recommend it. It's a fun map. Oh, I could have done a better strategy there with the dragon attacking 2 squares at once. And I will point out that the dragon is purple and looks an awful lot like Spyro the Dragon. Oh, I got some free orcs joining me. That's cool. And anyway, we're going to switch back here. So these are all the maps that I've been using to validate, and then Dragon Rider. DRRI1234.map is the name of that, and I think it's available for download on Celestial Havens if you're interested in downloading the map. Maybe I'll probably post a link in the description of the video in case anybody wants to download it. But yeah, this is the state of the reverse engineering of Heroes of Might and Magic 1. I've got a project plan. I'll probably start off with that in the next video and kind of talk about what the next steps are for this. I'm very close to having the Windows 95 code cracked. On this map, I have decoded the stats of Castor and these 3 who are fixed: Ambrose, Antoine, and Astra. Those are all 3 fixed characters. The other towns have they'll either have heroes randomly generated, or actually they probably won't. I think when you specify heroes like this, I'm guessing that you don't get a randomly generated hero that you start with. So but basically these hero locations and stats are specified. Basically Astra starts with an extra, in addition to like her random creatures. Actually, no, these creatures are probably specified. Archers and pikemen. yeah, I know Castor's dragon is specified, as well as his compass. The spellbook is not specified in the hero specification from what I've seen so far in the Windows 95 map specification as I'm looking at those bytes. And I'll in the next video I'll show you guys, or maybe one of the future videos, I'll show you guys what that hex analysis looks like, because I'm using a lot of nomenclature that's more technical for computer science, for reverse engineering. Machine code is ones and zeros. Hex is shorthand basically for ones and zeros. But yeah, I'm already talking about next videos, so I should probably sign off for now, and we'll say thanks for watching, everybody, and I don't want to say the annoying phrase of like and subscribe. I'd actually rather that you left a comment and ask questions like, what should I explain, what was unclear. But I'm planning to build this. I've got some time, and I'm having a lot of fun doing this. And in the very big picture, reverse engineering the map format is probably the hardest part of this. There's enough example code on Free Heroes 2 that I should be able to, with AI, get something playable in pretty short order once I fully understand basically the last piece of the Windows 95 map specification. And so for those of you just starting, I guess I'm just starting too, but we'll see how this evolves. And also, if you're a programmer, if you like AI, if you're vibe coding, and if you want to be involved in the project, I'm probably going to open source it pretty soon. Once it's at I basically want to do that once it starts to get playable, and have people test it. But if you'd like to contribute, I'm definitely looking for contributors. People who care about the game like I do. It'd be fun to work with people on it. So with that, thank you everybody. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day or night.